In September 1968, the Doors and Jefferson Airplane toured Europe together and played in the UK for the first time. Even though both bands had enjoyed great chart success in the States, their singles had failed to chart in Britain. Jefferson Airplane flew to the UK a week earlier as they were scheduled to play at the first Isle of Wight festival. New Musical Express journalist Chris Walder reported,
"It was obvious that almost everyone had come to see Jefferson Airplane, the group from America's West Coast and playing the UK for the first time. The Jeffersons brought an entourage of 30 lighting technicians and sound experts, and 5 tons of electrical equipment. Jefferson's Spencer Dryden, like other members of the group, wasn't too happy with the festival. During their 90-minute performance, none of the group could hear each other, and they were constantly forced to stop and retune in an attempt to get a uniform sound. Coupled with this, the group's psychedelic screen show had to be cut right down to prevent valuable lenses from being damaged by dust. Despite this, the Jeffersons continued with a great live show and got easily the best reception of any of the groups."
A week later, Melody Maker informed,
Jefferson Airplane arrived in London last week in a double-decker bus. Earlier at the airport, travelers to distant parts turned in wonder at the wildly dressed group that fled out of the airport towards the coach. Before they boarded the bus, the group posed for photographs. Grace Slick was hiding her pretty features in the large fur collar of her coat as photographers took pictures of them.
A crew of cameras from Granada Television filmed the Doors' arrival at London Airport. Granada was filming a 1-hour television special that would also include several songs filmed live at the Roundhouse. Upon arrival, Jim Morrison avoided the press and generally built up the image of an inaccessible dark poet. Morrison wasn't a star in Britain, so the press saw his attitude as somewhat pompous and pretentious. The New Musical Express spoke to Robbie Krieger and asked him about Morrison's behavior. Krieger said, "It depends on which day of the week you get him on. He used to be worse, but I think he's getting used to it now. It's just the way he is. I think I understand him as well as anybody, through being with him for 3 years. But I still don't understand him completely." The band appeared on Top of the Pops to promote their latest single Hello I Love You.
Yes, it's #1, it's Top of the Pops!
This was the first Doors single which managed to enter the top 20 in Britain. It stalled at number 15. The song got mixed reviews in the press. Most reviewers mentioned that the song bore a striking similarity to an old Kinks single from 1965.
Girl, I want to be with you. Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name?
Robbie Krieger was asked about the song. Krieger said, "A lot of people have said it's similar to the Kinks record, but we didn't think that when we made it. We cut it and then changed it afterwards so it would not sound like it. But I guess it still sounds like the Kinks record." Morrison said, "Hello I Love You isn't one of our best songs, but I'm not ashamed of it. I like the other side better. I was hoping they would flip it and play it, but they haven't. But we think in terms of LPs anyway. Once we've done an LP, we pick a single from it just for radio plays." At the time, the press was constantly comparing Morrison to Mick Jagger. And he was called the American Mick Jagger by various members of the press. That same month, Jumping Jack Flash by the Rolling Stones was voted Best British Single of the Year by the readers of Melody Maker. Journalist Chris Welch interviewed Jagger about it and asked him about the Doors and Jefferson Airplane. Welch wrote, "Jagger was wearing a green suit and green shoes, refusing cigarettes, and digging Mead Lux Lewis, Pete Johnson, and Albert Ammons on the turntable. This is good interviewing music," Jagger said while jigging gently from one foot to another. Welch asked, "How does Mick view bands like Jefferson Airplane and the Doors?" Jagger said, "I don't really listen to the Doors and Jefferson Airplane, to be brutally honest. I went to see the Doors in America and they were very hospitable and nice people. But they did tend to go on rather too long. I saw them at the Hollywood Bowl, and an hour and a half is too long for anybody. I've never seen Jefferson Airplane though. I don't really groove on groups so much these days. But there was a period when I went to see them all." The 2 shows at the Roundhouse also got mixed reviews in the press. Journalist Tony Wilson, however, wrote an enthusiastic review for the Melody Maker. Wilson wrote,
"The rumors were flying. Doors drummer John Densmore was missing. The groups were arguing about who would go on first. There was some speculation as to whether they would go on at all. The Friday night concert was scheduled to start at 9:30 p.m. And the audience, over 2,000 of them, had been sitting patiently since 7:30, and they had to wait a further 2 hours before the action began.
The journalist continued.
The Doors are undoubtedly one of the most professional groups on the scene anywhere. Everything hangs together well, and there is an underlying feel of calculation and presentation which projects the music to its full. The Jefferson Airplane, second on Friday and first on Saturday, lost some impact because the vocals were inaudible against the strong backing. The airplane's presentation is looser and more casual, but any lack in visual effect was more than made up by their amazing live show. It's been said that it's impossible to get the Doors and Jefferson Airplane together on the same stage in the States. Last weekend, Middle-earth achieved the impossible.
Despite Wilson's review, the press seemed to agree that most people preferred Jefferson Airplane to the Doors. John Peel wrote about the show, and he also seemed to share that opinion. Peel wrote, "At the Roundhouse, I preferred Jefferson Airplane. They were very together and were concerned with getting music across rather than images. I thought the Doors were very good musically, but I was disappointed. I prefer their records. On stage, they look very contrived. If they evolve around Jim Morrison purely as a show, which is his reputation, then to compare him to Mick Jagger is ridiculous. Everything Mick is doing on stage is natural. Jim Morrison crouched on stage, did a leap, and landed rather self-consciously." A reader called Valerie Evans sent a letter to the Melody Maker. The reader wrote,
"I've just been up to the Roundhouse to see Jefferson Airplane and the Doors. Now I realize why English groups are doing so well in America. They are a damn sight better. I admit I enjoyed the Airplane, but with all that equipment, they couldn't help blow everybody's minds. Blast more like. As far as I could see, the Doors are centered round Jim Morrison cavorting around the stage as a greasy sex symbol, a cross between Mick Jagger and PJ Proby. But the music is not so brilliant, and this is a girl writing."
Another reader called Ruth Donnelly sent a letter to another magazine. The reader wrote,
"I'd like to know exactly what we are supposed to be knocked out by in the Doors act. Is it their highly unoriginal music, their paltry lyrics, or the sexy gyrations of Mick Morrison, or is it Jim Jagger? I've seen the Doors stage act, heard their LPs, seen him on Top of the Pops, and read numerous articles about them. And still, the reason for their popularity evades me."
Melody Maker journalist Chris Welch criticized the playing ability of bands from the West Coast. Welch wrote,
"A lot of fine music has come from American groups. Great songs and great albums. There were the Love albums, Electric Flag, Mothers of Invention, Country Joe, Fever Tree, Clear Light, Moby Grape, Spirit, and endless more. But if one bases one's opinions of a group on their live performances, then my verdict is that most American groups who come here prove disappointing. Away from the studios, their singers appear weak, tame and cumbersome. The guitarists, numb-fingered and generally clueless. The drummers, ham-fisted and bunglingly inadequate. Jefferson Airplane operated rather like an old threshing machine, taking several minutes to warm up, and finally chugging into action. Quite pleasant, but as a cohesive group, they are well below the standard of any average discotheque support band. The Doors were supposed to have mystery, magic and chemistry, not to mention poetry and sex appeal. And yet, Jim Morrison clumping around was about as sexy as Arthur Mullard and as exciting as John Peel reading the football results.
Journalist Tony Wilson disagreed with him.
Having, like you, Chris, lost a lot of sleep to see them perform not just once but all their sets at the Roundhouse, then all I can say is you couldn't have really been listening."
The press asked Jim Morrison about the show, and he seemed quite happy about it. Morrison said, "The audience was one of the best we've ever had. It was different because in the States, they are there as much to enjoy themselves as to hear you. But at the Roundhouse, everyone was there to listen. It felt like going back to the roots again. And it stimulated us to do a good performance. They really took me by surprise. I expected him to be a little resistant, a little reserved, but they were fantastic. I enjoyed playing at the Roundhouse more than any other date for years."